Okay, so at this point we're going to look, instead of looking at a whole skull, we're going to look at the disarticulated bones. Okay, and remember the disarticulated bones are bones that have been removed from the skull, so you can see how they look independent of the other bones around them. So this is the frontal bone. You can tell because you can see part of the orbits here. You can also see this nice expanse where the forehead would be, and you can see kind of where you would be joining up with the nasal bones here. Okay, internally you can tell because there's this nice ridge, which we're not learning the name of, where you also have an attachment point for the membranes that support the brain, and then this nice space where your frontal lobes would sit. Okay, so that is the frontal bone. The parietal bone is really noteworthy because it has really no specific structures associated with it at all. It's just a nice, smooth, curved, flat bone. And when you turn it to its internal surface, you can see there's actually indentations on the bone associated with the vessels, the arteries specifically, that cover the lateral part of the brain. Okay. The temporal bone is very distinctive. You have your external acoustic meatus, that's a great landmark. You have your zygomatic process, another good landmark, and you have your mastoid process. Okay, so it looks like a very busy kind of bone. You can actually see part of the carotid canal on this one as well. Okay, so that's a nice view of that. Okay, then we have the occipital bone. Okay, the occipital bone has some indentations internally, again, for components of the brain to fit in. This is where the cerebellum would fit in right there. Its most obvious identifying feature is the foramen magnum. Okay, and then you can see the occipital condyles here as well. Okay, now the sphenoid bone is sometimes, just some people will describe it as looking like a bat, depending on how you hold it. I've heard other people say it looks kind of like a moth, okay, especially with these little eyes here, okay, and it definitely is an irregularly shaped bone, but it has such a distinctive shape. There's our sella turcica right there. Okay, and our optic canals are actually here and here. This would be the superior orbital fissure in each bone. Okay, and actually the sphenoid sinus is inside here. If we were thinking about this as the eyes of our bat or our moth, those are actually the openings that lead to the sphenoid sinus. Okay. Now this is the ethmoid bone. Okay, and there's the openings leading to the ethmoid air cells. Here's the crista galli. Okay, you can't see the cribriform plates too well. You can see that there are the little shelves of bone that would be associated with the middle and superior nasal concha, and you can see the perpendicular plate here as well. Okay, so that is definitely the ethmoid. We looked at the mandible already in its disarticulated form, but I did want to show you the maxilla also. Remember, the maxilla is what's going to have half a set of teeth, okay, if you see it, and most of them you can see the huge maxillary sinus in the bone as well. If you look from this view, here's the teeth again, here's part of that hard palate, okay, the palatine process of the maxilla. Okay, and remember, you are not required to identify structures on these disarticulated bones. If you were asked for these bones, it would just be to identify which bone it is. I'm going over the landmarks so you have some features to look at for that identification process.